Let me start by welcoming you to another live broadcast of Pateo TV, brought to you via the non-stop internet television station of CCN, Conscious Consumer Network.tv. Pateo TV is broadcast every Thursday starting at 8 p.m. Central European Time. My life work is the reunification of pure science and true spirituality, which I have named Holy Science, meaning the science of the whole of everything. Here you see the front cover of my latest book in English, which has over 500 pages. The major scientific discovery that I will reveal in this broadcast is not my first. My most famous discovery so far is the clock of Giza, which shows the time in the third temporal dimension. My first scientific discovery was the reverse rhythm in the prime numbers in 2010. In 2012, I discovered the natural 3D arrangement of the atoms, which I have named the periocta, meaning the periodic octahedron of the elements. In 1996, I successfully defended my PhD thesis, proving my competency as a substantive scientific researcher. My website is pateo.nl. There you find much more information on holy science. When you click on Pateo TV in the menu left, you will see both the archive and the agenda of Pateo Television. The first episode of Pateo TV was broadcast on January 8, 2015. The first series of Pateo TV includes 7 episodes. The 7th and last episode of this first series was broadcast on February 19, 2015. After that, this first series was also broadcast in Dutch, which is my mother tongue. Recordings of all previous episodes of Pateo TV are available on YouTube. Simply search on Pateo TV or go to my website, pateo.nl. The unveiling of my newest and so far my greatest discovery starts with the Dogon. The Dogon are an ethnic group living nowadays in the central plateau region of the country of Mali, Western Africa. For thousands of years, the Dogon have detailed knowledge of the Sirius solar system. Not until the 19th century, university astronomy was able to confirm the accuracy of their ancient knowledge. The Dogon mythology also includes knowledge of Saturn's rings and Jupiter's 4 major moons, none of which can be seen by the naked eye from the surface of our home planet. Let us therefore assume that all other claims of the Dogon are correct as well, especially those concerning the origin of human beings on our planet named Terra. In 1967, Robert Campbell started to write a book about the knowledge of the Dogon. In 1976, this book with the title The Sirius Mystery was published. Since then, many other books on this mysterious knowledge of the Dogon followed. A long time ago, the Dogon lived in the land that we nowadays know as Egypt. In ancient times, this land was known as Kemet, meaning the Black Land, due to the yearly inundation of the Nile River. The history of the Dogon goes back at least 50,000 years. Ancient verbal account of the Dogon tell us that a long time ago, beings from another planet visited Terra. They came from the Sirius solar system. Sirius is currently the 7th closest star to the central star in our solar system, named Helios. Sirius is about 25 times brighter than our sun Helios and about twice as massive, corresponding to also an about twice bigger size. Although Sirius appears to be a single star to the naked eye from Terra's surface, she is in reality a double star, as there are 2 bright stars in the Sirius solar system. Nowadays we name the smaller star Sirius B and the larger star Sirius A. In 1862, Sirius for the very first time by human eyes through a telescope. The Dogon name for Sirius B is Po Tolo. The Dogon word Po means small seed, while Tolo means star. The Dogon knew that Po Tolo emits bright white light. Nowadays, university astronomy has classified Sirius B as a white dwarf star. In fact, the size of Sirius B is even smaller than the size of Terra. Therefore, to refer to it as small seed is very accurate. Both the bigger star and the smaller star orbit a third heavenly body that does not emit visible light. University astronomy has not yet confirmed the existence of this third lightless object. However, the Dogon named it Emma Ya. This means Lady Sorghum. The sorghum refers to a widely cultivated cereal from ancient times. Also, this name makes a lot of sense, as the central body in the Sirius solar system feeds both luminous stars. Dogon named the biggest star Sigitolo, meaning the star of the Sigri. The conjunction of Emaya, Sigipolo, and Potolo occurs almost precisely every 50 years. The beings from the Sirius solar system that long time ago visited Terra came from the planet Xilantia that orbits Emaya. According to my research, Xilantia aligns with Sigipolo and Potolo every 60 years. Only in that short period, half of Xilantia's surface is not lit by at least one of the two suns. Only then there are nights on Xilantia. In order to honor this 60 years illumination cycle on Xilantia, the Dogons celebrate the Sigri festival every 60 years. The most recent Sigri festival started in 1967, with the next one due in 2027. The symbol that these Dogon have on their heads means 60. It honors the visitors that came from Xilantia a long time ago. Time has three dimensions. The length of the cycle of daily time is 24 hours, divided in morning, afternoon, evening, and night. The length of the cycle of yearly time is a little over 365 days, divided in spring, summer, autumn, and winter. Plants will refer to the third dimension of time as the great year. The length of the cycle of this great yearly time is almost 26,000 years, divided in the Golden Age, the Silver Age, the Bronze Age, and the Iron Age. Just like the clock phase of the daily time is divided into 12 hours, so is the yearly time divided into 12 star constellations of the zodiac. In the very same way, the great yearly time is divided into 12 aeons, which each aeon always corresponds to a zodiac constellation. The length of each aeon is 2,160 years, corresponding to 6 times 6 times 6 decades. In 2011, I discovered that the pyramids and the Great Sphinx on the Giza Plateau near the current Egyptian capital, Cairo, form a kind of clock that shows the time in the third temporal dimension. I named this discovery the Clock of Giza. The Clock of Giza shows that this great yearly time goes round counterclockwise. In the famous year 2012, this great yearly time cycle went from the aeon of Pisces to the aeon of Aquarius. Since then, we have finally left the Iron Age in order to have entered again into the Bronze Age. Prior to the year 2309 BCE, before our current era, humanity also lived in the Bronze Age. That previous Bronze Age started in 6629 BCE. Prior to the year 6629 BCE, humanity lived in the Silver Age. The most recent Golden Age ended in 8789 BCE. It started in 70,429 BCE. The Golden Age always starts with the Aeon of Scorpio, and it always ends with the Aeon of Leo. The cycle of the Great Year is the result of the three-dimensional screw movement of Helios. Seen from the front, it looks like a two-dimensional circular movement. Helios movement is connected with a similar movement of the Sirius solar system. In several mythological stories, Helios is the sun who dances with his mother, which is Sirius. In the Iron Age, Mother Sirius and the sun Helios are furthest apart. During that period, Sirius is about 9 light years away from our home planet. Even then, Sirius is still the most brightest star in the night sky. In the Golden Age, Mother Sirius and her son Helios are closest together. During that period, Sirius is about 4 light years away from our home planet. Then, Sirius is as bright as a full moon. During each Golden Age, we experience Sirius as our second sun. University astronomy wants us to believe that all stars are moving away from each other, resulting in an ongoing expansion of the universe. This means that we should see a so-called redshift in the light emitted by all distant stars. However, it is an irrefutable fact that for quite some time now, the light emitted by Sirius shows a blue shift. That means that Sirius is moving towards us. We University astronomy cannot explain this. However, I can. I simply explain this by showing that Helios and Sirius are energetically connected. During the Golden Age, it is relatively easy to travel from the Sirius solar system to our solar system, as both solar systems are then closest together. 8 Golden Age periods ago, around 195,000 BCE, the beings from the Sirius solar system came to Terra. Dogon named these beings the Nomos, which literally means to make one drink. Dogon also referred to the Nomos as masters of the water, the monitors, and the teachers. The Dogon described them as being both amphibious and androgynous. Wooden sculptures of the Dogon, sometimes several hundred years old, depict the Nomo as a being that has both female breasts and a male reproductive organ. According to the Dogon, initially 8 Nomos came to Terra. Perhaps this number of 8 is a reference to the time that these beings came to Terra, which was 8 Golden Age periods ago. Around 195,000 BCE, Nomos created the Homo sapiens in their image. In Genesis chapter 1 verse 26 would have been translated correctly. It would be, and God said that God made man in their image after their likeness. In all previous verses, God is singular, but in this wrong translation of this verse, God suddenly becomes allegedly plural. Clearly, this is a huge translation error. Holy science proves that God is one. Therefore, God is by definition always singular. Nomos created 2 types of Homo sapiens. One type would not be able to live on the surface of Terra, and perhaps the other might. However, it turned out that both types of human beings managed to stay alive quite well. Holy science refers to these 2 types simply as the whites and the blacks, the basis of their original skin color. University scientism refers to these 2 types of humans as the Homo sapiens neanderthalensis and the Homo sapiens sapiens. In those days, the Gizeh Plateau was on Terra's equator. Later on in this presentation, I will come back to this. For now, we are certain that the whites were plotted in the northern hemisphere, probably somewhere in or around the area nowadays known as Germany, while the blacks were plotted in the southern hemisphere, probably somewhere in or around the area nowadays known as Ethiopia. For about 140,000 years, both Homo sapiens species lived separated from each other. Not until 55,000 BCE, these 2 human beings started to mix. The result of this mixing is the variety of skin colors and appearances that we see in human beings today. One of the biggest lies of university scientism is their clear case of fraud by claiming that the upright walking ape being was a sort of human being. The Latin word for ape is simia, while the Latin word homo means human. Irrefutable truth is that the so-called Homo erectus never existed, as these creatures were upright walking ape beings, or simia erectus in Latin. Human beings have longer legs than arms. For ape beings, the length of the arms and the legs are about the same. Simply one look at an authentic skeleton immediately proves that it was an upright walking ape being, meaning a simia erectus. Have you ever seen an ape being with a broken arm or a broken leg in plaster? Human beings have fragile, light bones that can easily break. Ape beings, on the other hand, have massive, heavy bones that not at all break easily. That is why their relative weight is so much higher. More importantly, human beings have 1 pair of chromosomes less compared to ape beings, which clearly proves that the human beings did not at all naturally evolve from apes. How could nature have lost a pair of chromosomes? This single fact alone fully falsifies the so-called evolution theory, which was perhaps the most unscientific theory ever. The truth is that the Nomos created human beings their own image after their likeness out of ape beings. This means that we humans look much more like the nomos than we look like apes. Also, the skulls of ape beings differ strongly from the skulls of human beings. Originally, human beings had a much larger skull than we have nowadays. In the beginning, the cranial capacity of human beings used to be about 1650 cubic centimeters, while this volume is nowadays about 300 cubic centimeters less. Later on, I will explain the reason for this remarkable decrease. Based on the most advanced ape beings that lived on the center of Europe, the Nomos created the whites. Based on the most advanced ape beings that lived in the center of Africa, the Nomos created the blacks. Again, this happened almost 200,000 years ago. The whites migrated in all directions, but mostly to the south and to the east. In those days, the seawater level was about 130 meters or 425 feet lower. That means that between Greece and Turkey, there was no Aegean Sea, as the region was then mostly land and some rivers. Also, the Caspian Sea and the Black Sea were then still much very smaller. And the Sea of Azov, north of the Black Sea, was then only land and no sea at all. At least as early as 130,000 BCE, the whites knew how to make bows, as by that time they went with bows on the Mediterranean Sea. Around 39,000 BCE, after 16,000 years, the blending of the blacks and the whites was completed. Since then, it appeared that the original whites have ceased to exist. However, the truth is that the whites and the blacks merged into a single species, named the Homo sapiens. In 71,000 BCE, so before the start of the mixing of both types of human beings, the Toba volcano erupted, which nearly completely wiped out all human beings. Only about 15,000 humans were able to survive this enormous eruption. The current Lake Toba on the island of Sumatra in Indonesia resulted from this ancient eruption of the Toba volcano. In that time of 71,000 BCE, Indonesia was not a group of islands as it is nowadays. In those days, all islands and the seas in between were part of a land that was connected with both Asia and Australia. That land was known as Sundaland. In those days, the shape of the landmasses on Terra was different from what it is today. Not only was Australia still connected to Eurasia, also the American continent was not as stretched out as it is nowadays. West of what we now call the continent of America, there was a huge landmass called Lemuria. Actually, the current American landmass was part of Lemuria, also known as the Land of Mu. And precisely where Plato said that Atlantis was, there was indeed a huge island in those days. Plato wrote, an island situated in front of the straits which are by you called the Pillars of Heracles. Seen from Greece, Atlantis was therefore beyond the Pillars of Heracles, which is an ancient term for the Strait of Gibraltar, which connects the Mediterranean Sea with the Atlantic Ocean. Because the sea level is nowadays 130 meters or 425 feet higher than it was in those days, Atlantis now lies at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, which was named after this legendary island. Coming back to Lemuria, the current Easter Island was at the west coast of this ancient land of Mu. The current population of this island named it Rapa Nui. On this island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, the many Moai statues are remains of the ancient civilization of Lemuria. Almost all maps of Lemuria do not take into account the shape of the American continent in that time. Here we see the topography of the terrestrial land surfaces and the ocean basins. When we examine a depth map of the Pacific Ocean, it is remarkably easy to see what used to belong to the land of Lemuria. Similarly, when we examine a depth map of the Atlantic Ocean, it is again remarkably easy to see what used to be the island of Atlantis. The islands nowadays known as the Azores used to be the mountains of Atlantis. On the bottom of the ocean in that region, we, for instance, find the outline of the square base of a pyramid. After the eruption of the Tobel volcano, in the period between 70,000 BCE and 60,000 BCE, during a golden age, the first advanced human civilization arose in Lemuria. This was a civilization of the blacks, with the age of the Nomos. The faces of the Moai statues clearly prove this claim. The second advanced human civilization arose in Atlantis, after the beginning of the mixing of the blacks and the whites. This first episode of Atlantis lasted from about 43,000 BCE until about 35,000 BCE, again during a golden age. During the last aeon of this golden age, which is always the aeon of Leo, around 70,000, 37,000 BCE, the Atlanteans created a giant lion with a human face exactly at the very spot where both types of human beings started to mix, from 55,000 BCE. The second episode of Atlantis arose around 70,000 BCE at the start of the most recent golden age. Again, during the Aeon of Leo, around 11,000 BCE, the Atlanteans created something magnificent next to the Great Sphinx, referring to the Great Pyramid. As the river Nile is slowly migrating from west to east, Great Sphinx was in those days located in the middle of the Nile, but the Great Pyramid was directly connected to this mighty river. In his dialogues named Timetius and Critias, Plato wrote about the lost civilization of Atlantis. According to Plato, Atlantis vanished 9,000 years before Solon. Solon, who received this knowledge from a Comitian priest and then passed it on, eventually all the way to Plato, lived from 638 BCE until 558 BCE. That means that the downfall of Atlantis was around 9,600 BCE. Plato's timing of the flooding of Atlantis perfectly matches with the evidence of a global sea level rise of 425 feet or 130 meters around 9,600 BCE. Before this sea level rise, Japan used to be a peninsula. Clearly, the structure of Yonaguni, close to what is now Taiwan, was not built on the water. Before this global sea level rise, also Crete used to be a peninsula. Before 9,600 BCE, there was no Aegean Sea between Greece and Turkey, as stated before, as that region was all land with some rivers. How was a global sea level rise of 425 feet or 130 meters possible? Where did all the water come from? The conclusion of my scientific research is that all this water came from space. In order to understand this, we now come back to the Nomos. Long time ago, the Sirius solar system was invaded by amoral intergalactic raiders. Much later, in ancient Sumer, these plunderers were known as the Anunnaki. When the Nomos learned about the true nature of these Anunnaki, they tried to exterminate all of them. In this, the Nomos failed, however, as some Anunnaki escaped to our solar system. There, they hit on the planet of Tiamat, that used to orbit Helios in between Mars and Jupiter. Tiamat's surface was entirely covered with water. This water world had several moons, such as Ceres, which is still orbiting Helios between Mars and Jupiter. Also Venus, Pluto, and our current moon named Luna were originally moons of Tiamat. Because of Tiamat's watery surface, she appeared as an extremely bright light in the night sky, and she bounced the sunlight back to. In fact, Tiamat was the name that the ancient Sumerians used for this sparkling planet. More precisely, it was Ti-Amate. In Sumerian mythology, Tiamat was the goddess of the oceans, depicted as a sea serpent. Nowadays, Tiamat indeed looks like a serpent that crawls around Helios in between Mars and Jupiter, referring to the asteroid belt. The mating in Sumerian mythology of Tiamat with Apsu, who is the god of fresh water, symbolizes that the heavily salty waters of Tiamat were united with the earthly fresh waters of Terra. The first generation of deities to the ancient Sumerians came from Tiamat, after this water planet was slain by Marduk. However, Marduk means Jupiter. Perhaps the nomes used Jupiter as a base to fight the Anunnaki. The Sumerian name Anunnaki means offspring of Anu, referring to Saturn. My conclusion is that the Anunnaki at first fled to Saturn, actually a moon of Saturn, before they invaded Terra, thousands of years later. Sumerian mythology also informs us that the heavens and the earth are formed from Tiamat's divided body. Indeed, after Tiamat was slain, about half of her became the current asteroid belt in the heavens between Mars and Jupiter, while her other half became the huge sea level rise on Terra. Some Anunnaki managed to escape to Saturn's moon, Titan, which is the only moon in our solar system with a thick atmosphere. Around 9600 BCE, the Nomos blew up Tiamat. A drastic event forms the core of my Tiamat theory. As stated before, about half of Tiamat's remains became the current asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. All comets and asteroids are from within the heliosphere. Theoretically, they cannot be older than 10,000 years, as they constantly burn themselves up. This fully supports my Tiamat theory. Next, a bombardment of giant ice meteorites hit Terra. This huge meteor shower happened around 9600 BCE. After this deliberate annihilation of Tiamat, the moon Venus had to find a new stable orbit. In that drifting process, the loose Venus caused a lot of upheaval on Terra, as described in his books by Emanuel Velikovsky. This means that the claim of Velikovsky that Venus caused quite some turmoil for all life on the surface of Terra only some thousands of years ago is correct. However, almost all his other claims were false, although I am convinced that Velikovsky was a genuine, truth-seeking scientist. On the other hand, Zachariah Sitchin was a deliberate deceiver. He was filmed at a 33rd degree Freemason ceremony, also while he did a Mason handshake with Russell Pine, better known as Jordan Maxwell. Have you ever wondered why Sitchin could become such a best-selling author of so many books if he really told the truth? On the basis of his false interpretation of a famous Sumerian depiction, Sitchin concluded that the heavenly body that was no longer present in our solar system was allegedly named Nibiru. My research clearly shows that this so-called 12th planet was Tiamat, and that the sole and only purpose of the fiction of Nibiru was to deceive. My hypothesis is that Tiamat's original orbital time was 3600 days, while Terra's orbit time used to take precisely 360 days. Every 10 years, Terra would then realign with Tiamat. With this basic insight, the Sumerian numeral system almost becomes obvious. Ancient Sumerians counted alternately in multiples of 10 and 6. They did this long before the Anunnaki invaded the area of Mesopotamia. On the other hand, the Dogon celebrated every 60th year. My conclusion is that our ancient ancestors therefore considered the number 6 to correspond to the very essence of the heavenly dynamics. first city that was built after the cataclysm of around 9600 BCE was Göbekli Tepe, in the region where the rivers of the Euphrates and the Tigris begin. The city of Göbekli Tepe was founded around 9500 BCE. Next, north of the Dead Sea, near the Jordan River, the city of Jericho was founded around 9400 BCE. In 8500 BCE, the famous wall around Jericho was completed. Nowadays, Jericho is the oldest continuously inhabited city on this planet. Later on, in 7400 BCE, the city of Catalhoyuk was founded in the land that we nowadays refer to as Turkey. Jericho and Catalhoyuk were the first cities in the region that was also known as the Fertile Crescent. Until about 5500 BCE, also the northern part of Africa was much more fertile than it is today. Around that time, the desertification of North Africa began, which eventually turned savanna to Sahara. This desertification caused the migration of the North Africans to the Nile region. Similarly, though much later, civilizations around the Indus and the Ganges in ancient India arose, and around the Yangtze River in China, also known as the Yellow River. The most important life-changing event on Terra was not so much the sea level rise of 9600 BC. It was the arrival of Luna in an orbit around Terra, maybe 6,500 years later. Before Luna's arrival, Terra's rotational axis was not tilted as it is nowadays. It used to be perpendicular to the ecliptic, which is the plane of Terra around Helios. In that original position, the Gizeh Plateau was on Terra's equator, as stated before. So were dozens of other ancient sites. All these ancient sites were built on the original equator in order to worship the sun Helios. On each of those days, on any location on this original equator, the sun Helios would rise perfectly in the east, then ascend straight up to the zenith position at noon, after which he would set perfectly in the west. That is why all the ancient sites, from Machu Picchu in present-day Peru to Eastern Islands, almost all perfectly lie on that line of the original equator. The construction of all these ancient sites in Peru, Algeria, Egypt, Vietnam, Thailand, India, Burma, and Vanuatu in Oceania originate from before 3114 BCE. In the current tilted position of Terra, this original equator has the shape of a sine wave. The original location of the North Pole is where we nowadays find the city of Valdez in the USA state of Alaska, right in the middle of an invisible pentagram. On the points of this pentagram we find Giza, Angkor, Vanuatu, and Easter Island. To me, it is still unclear to what its fifth point in the ocean east of Brazil is pointing. This is our planet seen from the north in the original position. Before the arrival of Luna, the sun Helios rose every day at the very same spot in the east. He also went down at the very same spot in the west. The only thing that gradually changed was the star constellation that rose just before sunrise. That is why those star constellations became so meaningful to our ancient ancestors. That was the only way for them to know the time of year, as then there were no seasons. Passing through each star constellation period lasted precisely 30 sunrises. A full cycle of 12 stellar periods lasted exactly 360 days, as stated before. The names that we still use today for the 12 constellations of the zodiac originate from the names given to them by the ancient Sumerians. These constellations allowed the ancient Sumerians to divide the year, which then had 360 days, in 12 equal parts. I refer to these periods of 30 days each as stellar periods. In those days, the star constellation of Draco lay curled around the original North Pole location. As our planet Terra was not yet tilted, there was no precession cycle either. Draco was therefore the fixed rotating star constellation in the north since time immemorial. After our home planet Terra became tilted, the star Tuban, at the tail of the heavenly dragon, became the North Pole star. As the clock of Giza shows, the three largest pyramids on the Gizeh Plateau depict the belt of Orion. The reason why this belt seems to be upside down is because most people look at these three pyramids facing north. The correct way, however, faces south. Next, we need to understand that the original direction to the south differs 23.5 degrees east from its current direction. We also know that the belt of Orion is pointing towards Sirius. As the three largest Gizeh pyramids depict the belt of Orion, or Osiris, the obelisk of Heliopolis depicts Sirius, or Isis. Now, let us see exactly where this ancient obelisk that depicts Isis is located. Please note that the god Osiris is standing here perfectly upright, as that again beautifully proves my claim of the original equator. The line from Orion's belt when Osiris is standing upright is exactly parallel to the line that touches the southeast corners of the three pyramids. That line points precisely to the obelisk of Heliopolis. Almost all ancient paintings of the obelisk of Heliopolis show the Gizeh pyramids on the backgrounds at the horizon. Why did modern man completely forget about this essential connection? This map of Cairo is facing north, as almost all current maps do. It shows the line that touches the southeast corners of the Gizeh pyramids precisely goes to the obelisk of Heliopolis. Please make sure that your seat belt is fastened because the next picture will most certainly blow you away. It also proves beyond any doubt the correctness of the clock of Giza. When the clock of Giza is positioned correctly towards the original southern direction, the Golden Age is precisely to the west, while the Iron Age is precisely to the east. The original north-south line separates the Iron and Bronze Ages to the left from the Silver and Golden Ages to the right. How ingenious is that? Anyway, let us in the meanwhile continue with the events of the true human history. Around 3800 BCE, the Anunnaki invaded Terra, about 7 centuries before the arrival of the moon to man. At first, the Anunnaki aided the development of the Sumerian civilization. It started in the city of Ur. Ancient Sumerian texts describe the Anunnaki as tall, reptilian-like beings. Sometimes they were depicted with wings or a bird head, symbolizing that they could fly. After all, the Anunnaki possessed advanced technology. Next, the Anunnaki built a dam in order to turn the Persian Gulf into land. This land became known as Eden or Eden. The Persian Gulf is rather shallow compared to the Arabian Sea and the Indian Ocean. The bottom of the Persian Gulf is about 60 meters below sea level. Very appropriately, the Sumerian word Eden means open field. The Anunnaki created Eden as the habitat for the genetically re-engineered Homo sapiens. Indeed, through genetic modification, the Anunnaki created the Homo sapiens servus. Servus means serving. They named this human slave species Adamu, meaning man of earth. In the book of Genesis, his name was changed into Adam. The Hebrew calendar tells us exactly when the first re-engineered human was born. That was at the start of this Judaic calendar, on October 6, 3761 BCE. Let us therefore indeed assume that this first human slave species was born in the year 3761 BCE. The second chapter of the book of Genesis informs us where this Garden of Eden was located. There we read, "Now a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from there it parted and became 4 riverheads." In reality, 4 rivers merged instead of becoming parted. In Genesis, these 4 rivers are named Pishon, Gihon, Hiddekel, and Prat. Prat is nowadays known as the Euphrates, Hiddekel as the Tigris. Next, Gihon is the Karun River that runs through Iran. Currently, Pishon is no longer a river. It used to run through Kuwait. After the Eden project of the Anunnaki failed, since the Homo sapiens servus upset their mother bias by not obeying all their rules, the slave species was kicked out of Eden. They probably went to the city of Uruk, which was founded around 3500 BCE. Then, shortly before 3114 BCE, Luna was about to arrive in orbit around Terra. Therefore, the Anunnaki instructed an offspring of the first Homo sapiens servus to build a huge lifeboat, together with his family. In the original Sumerian version of the story, the hero was named Siut-Sura or Siusudra, while in the book of Genesis, this hero who survived this ancient deluge is named Noah. Later on, the Anunnaki told the Sumerians that they deliberately created this huge flooding as a retaliation for the disobedient slave people of those days. The truth is that the arrival of Luna caused Terra to tilt, resulting in a global tsunami. This tsunami also smashed the Persian Gulf Dam into pieces. Some scholars conclude, on the basis of the amount of years mentioned in the book of Genesis, that Noah's flood occurred in the year 1656 Anno Mundi, meaning after the creation, which corresponds to the year 2104 BCE. This literal interpretation dates this flood 1010 years too late, as it happened actually 646 years after this genetic re-engineering. One of the reasons for this error is that the stellar periods of 30 days were incorrectly translated as annual years. When we simply count the ages as mentioned in Genesis as an amount of stellar periods of 30 days each, it suddenly starts to make a lot of sense. According to Genesis, Noah was 600 when the flood came, meaning 600 stellar periods, which equals the age of 50 years old. The 8th chapter of Genesis tells us that Noah was on the sea for exactly 150 days, and that this period also equaled precisely 5 months. The word months here is an incorrect translation, as it is referred to 5 stellar periods of indeed 30 days each. In fact, all ancient calendars from before 3114 BCE counted 360 days in a year. After 3114 BCE, an extra period of 5 days was added to this ancient calendars as the arrival of Luna had not only tilted Terra, it also has made the orbit of Terra around Helios a little over 5 natural days longer. That is why in ancient Kemet, the year calendar was divided in 12 stellar periods of 30 days each, plus a 13th period of 5 extra days. Similarly, The half calendar of the Maya was divided in 18 periods of 20 days each, plus a 19th period of 5 extra days. We nowadays refer to these periods as months, but before 3114 BCE, there was no moon orbiting Terra. The word month is derived from the word moon, referring to more or less one illumination cycle of the moon Luna. The ancient Comitian year calendar was divided into 3 seasons of 4 stellar periods each. According to some scholars, the Comitian year calendar started on the date that corresponds to September 11 in our current year calendar. To me, that is a rather remarkable date. Directly after the celestial path of our sun Helios has changed due to Luna's arrival, the Sunset Observatory was built in Chanquillo, Peru, by the Norte Chico civilization. It was completed around 3100 BCE. In total, 13 huge stones mark the sunset locations between both solstices. A similar sunset observatory was built in Tiwanaku, Bolivia. For this observatory, 11 sunset locations were marked. With these 11 sunset locations, a year was divided into 20 periods of about 18 days each. Only both ending periods, that each included a solstice, took 2 or 3 days longer. Not only did the Maya base their half calendar on this division of a year in 20 periods, the Maya also started to count the year after Luna's arrival. This became known as the long count calendar. However, after more than 5,000 years later, nobody knew anymore what this long count calendar was actually counting. Next, it was falsely assumed that it was probably a countdown calendar, that counted down to the year 2012 of our current era. The truth is that this long count calendar simply counts the time that went by since Luna's arrival in 3114 BCE. Also, the first edition of Stonehenge was built immediately after 3114 BCE, for the very same reason. And the same is true for the so-called Johan stone calendar, near Mpumalanga in South Africa. Claimed by some that this ancient stone calendar, also ridiculously named Adam's calendar, would be at least 75,000 years old, is completely absurd. Its first edition was constructed immediately after 3114 BCE. 3114 BCE, the star Tuban on Drager's tail became the North Pole star, as stated before. Around midnight, it then aligned in the northern direction with the star Kocham, at the front of the constellation of the Small Dipper, or the Lesser Bear. In the southern direction, Sirius then vertically aligned with Orion's belt around midnight. That is why the shafts in the Great Pyramid were made after 3114 BCE, about 8,000 years after this Great Pyramid was built. The Sumerian history tells us that after the flood had swept over and the kingship had descended from heaven, the kingship was in Kish. Apparently, Anunnaki waited in a spaceship until the surface of Terra was peaceful again. The city of Tel El Burgayar, in present-day Iraq, is located where 5,000 years ago the city of Ur was. In the time before the Persian Gulf Dam, Ur was a coastal city near the mouth of the Euphrates and at the Persian Gulf. Ur became famous for its ziggurat, which was a shrine for Nana, meaning the moon Luna. Perhaps the Anunnaki claimed that they put Luna in an orbit around Terra. Or perhaps the Anunnaki claimed that Luna was their space station. Anyway, ancient Sumerians worshipped Luna, or Nana as they named her, as their goddess. In those days, the priesthood, who claimed to represent Nana, also named Sin, had complete power over the people. As we will see later on, this priesthood ever since retained as much power over the people as possible. For long, the main center of power was the Sumerian city-state of Ur. After the flood, in the nearby walled city of Uruk, one of the priests ruled as a king. These priest kings of Uruk always had long beards. Around 2500 BCE, the Sumerian city-state of Uruk was remarkably advanced. In fact, all Sumerian city-states were under the control of the priesthood, who served the Anunnaki. This continued until the rise of the military kings, which started about 2500 BCE. That was the moment when the priesthood moved from the Mesopotamian area to the Nile area, as we will see later on in this episode of Pateo TV. The military kings were named Lu-Gals, which means man, Lu, and big, Gal. In the beginning, these men were really big, as they were partly Anunnaki and partly Homo sapiens. The most well-known big man was Gilgamesh. He was so tall that he could hold a lion as if it was a pussycat. Gilgamesh was the fifth king of Uruk, according to the Sumerian writings. This giant was 18 feet or 5.5 meters tall. Apparently, Gilgamesh's hobby was taming lions. Also, the Bible informs us about these half-breed Anunnaki. In Genesis chapter 6, verse 2, we read that the Bene Elohim saw the daughters of men that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. This Bene Elohim means the sons of Elohim. Both El and Anu are named for Saturn. Therefore, El-Ohim means the same as Anunnaki, both meaning those who came down from Saturn. The sons of the Anunnaki, or the Elohim, were creatures like Gilgamesh. These creatures, also named Nephilim in the book of Genesis, raped any human female they wanted. Ever since, the offspring of these half-breed Anunnaki honors these raped women by depicting one woman as their prime evil mother. Later in Kemet, the name of Isis also referred to this prime evil mother. Leonardo da Vinci tried to warn us for the offspring via his painting titled Mona Lisa, referring to the moon Luna. We nowadays find that very same face on the so-called Statue of Liberty in the harbor of New York City. Later on, I will come back to this. Even the biggest critic of the view that I present here cannot deny that the 10th chapter of Genesis openly praises the first giant that rules in Mesopotamia. In that chapter, he is named Nimrod, but in the Sumerian historic accounts we find the name of Enmerkar. In fact, the book of Genesis is simply an altered version of the true historical account of the half-breed Anunnaki offspring. However, the timeline, as mentioned in Genesis, does not make much sense at all. For instance, Enmerkar rules from about 2650 BCE, while the city of Babylon, named Babel in Genesis, was founded 350 years later. Actually, Babylon was founded by Sargon of Akkad, who created the first intercity empire in Mesopotamia. Around 2200 BCE, a huge building was created in Babylon, named the Tower of Babel in Genesis. Babylon was also famous because of its hanging gardens. The Akkadian name Bab Ilim means gate, Bab, to Saturn, Ilu. The Sumerian El became Il or Ilu in Akkadian. Sargon the Conqueror was born in Akkad. From there, he conquered all other cities in Mesopotamia. Now we come to the story of Abram, also known as Abraham. The 12th chapter of Genesis starts as follows. Now Yahweh said to Abram, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. So Abram went, as Yahweh had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 when he departed from Haran. And Abram took Sarai, his wife, and Lot, his brother's son, and all their possessions they had gathered, and the people they had acquired in Haran, and they set out to go to the land of Canaan. The city of Haran here was known in Sumer as Ur. So, how old was Abram when he left Ur? The most found answer to this question is 75 years old, as this is indeed literally stated in this version of this ancient text, although some still argue that it was actually 70 years old. Again, these amounts are not annual years. In those days, the age was counted in seasons. Like we saw in the Comitian year calendar, each year consisted of 3 seasons. This means that Abram was 75 seasons old, meaning 25 years old, when he was told to leave the city of Ur. According to Judaic scholars, Abram was born in the year 1948 Anno Mundi. To me, this is absolutely no coincidence that the unlawful state of Israel was founded in the year 1984 as well, but then in our current era. The next question is then, in which Anno Mundi year did Abram leave Ur? One would expect to find the answer of 1948 plus 75 equals 2023. However, the answers that I found on the internet range from 1953 to 2448, which covers a range of almost 500 years. Clearly, there is no consensus about Abram's departure date. I have concluded that Abram was born in the year 1812 BCE and that he left Ur in 1787 BCE. A literal interpretation places Abram's birth 352 years after the deluge. In reality, it was 1302 years after this flooding, meaning 950 years later. Therefore, the historical accuracy of the book of Genesis is way too low. My conclusion is that these stories were meant to hide a secret story underneath. That secret story informs us that the base of power of the Anunnaki-serving priesthood went from the Mesopotamian area to the Nile area. If they indeed left Ur in 1787 BCE, then this migration of power took them 23 years, as Kenjer, the first Semitic king, took control of Kemet in 1764 BCE. The year that is right in the middle of this power migration period is 1776 BCE. That is why there was also a power migration in 1776 CE, as I've explained in the first series of Pateo TV. It was during the 13th dynasty that Kenjer became the first Semitic king of Kemet. Before him, all rulers of this black land were descendants of the blacks, as the statue of the first ruler named Narmer or Nemes clearly shows. Please note that the first dynasty started immediately after the so-called deluge in 3114 BCE. Now I will not explain all the dynasties in detail. I just point out that during the 15th dynasty, the priesthood originating from Mesopotamia took full control over the Nile area. Then they were named the Hyksos, meaning rulers of foreign countries, or simply foreign kings. In Exodus chapter 12, verse 41, we read that the descendants of Abraham were in Kemet for 430 years. This means that the Pharaoh, or king of the so-called Exodus, ruled during the 18th dynasty, which was the first dynasty of the new kingdom. Next, I will prove beyond any doubt who this king was. Most people assume that there were only 32 dynasties. In the 32nd dynasty, Greece, or actually Macedonia, ruled over Egyptos, as it was renamed then. After the death of Cleopatra in 30 BCE, the 33rd dynasty started, in which Egyptus became a province of the Roman Empire. Officially, this Roman Empire ended in the year 641 of our common era, but in reality, the Roman Empire then became covert. The power base of this Roman Empire that wants to rule the entire planet never left the city of Rome, as it is nowadays known as Vatican City. In ancient Kemet, there were 5 types of important buildings or houses, named Per. Per A was the high house, or the house of leadership. The Greek name Pharaoh, based on Per A or Perao, was not known in ancient Kemet. Per K was the house of physical projection, meaning a tomb. Per Ba was the house of wisdom, meaning a temple. Per Ber was the house of understanding, meaning an academia, on which much later the idea of the university was based. Finally, Per Neter was the house of nature. Actually, the word nature originated from nater or nether. The Greek word for a Per Neter became pyramids, meaning fire in the middle. As a Per Neter was clearly not a Per K, the claim that the pyramids served as tombs is utterly false. The 18th dynasty of Kemet started in 1549 BCE with the rule of King Ahmose I. The name Thutmose, or Thutmosis, means born of Thoth. We therefore should actually write it as Thothmoses. When Thutmose II died in 1479 BCE, Thutmose III was just 2 years old. That is why the first wife of Thutmose II, named Hatshepsut, became the regent for 21 years. The second wife of Thutmose II, named Iset, was the mother of Thutmose III, the heir of Thutmose II. At the age of 23, Thutmose III became the ruler. Due to his conquest, he was known as the warrior king. Thutmose III won all his battles. Under his reign, which started in 1458 BCE, Kemet reached its largest empire, which included present-day Syria and Palestine. The name Amenhotep means Amun is satisfied. Amenhotep III ruled from 1388 BCE to 1351 BCE. His reign was a period of unprecedented prosperity and artistic splendor. Kemet reached the peak of her international power. Next, the son of Amenhotep III, named Amenhotep IV, became the ruler in 1380 BCE. In 1346 BCE, he changed his name into Akhenaten, meaning servant of Aten. The beautiful Nefertiti was his wife. In 1343 BCE, Akhenaten and Nefertiti got a son. They named him Tutankhaten, meaning living image of Aten. Now we know who the Pharaoh of the Exodus was, as exactly 430 years of exile after the start of the reign of the first Semitic king, Akhenaten was murdered. And to be clear, there were never Semitic slaves in Kemet. The priesthood that went from the Mesopotamian area to the Nile area worshipped Saturn as their god and Luna as their goddess. Both are their king and their queen of the night, or their king and their queen of the darkness. To them, Isis meant Luna and Osiris meant Saturn. Out of their darkness, the sunrise of Horus is born accordingly to this Saturnian priesthood. Also, Amun literally means the hidden one, and it referred to Saturn. Therefore, Amun-Ra means the black sun, clearly referring to Saturn. Amun was also known as the god of wind, which indeed shows the airy essence of the night. Set, or Satan, is the helper of this dark lord. Actually, Satan directly refers to Saturn. The very opposite of the dark combination of Amun and Set is the light combination of Horus and Ra. Between the daily phase of Horus, meaning the phase after sunrise, which is the morning, and the daily phase of Ra, meaning the phase after noon or midday, which is afternoon, there is the phase of Aten, meaning the ascended position of the divine light bringer. Aten refers to the Son of God when he is sitting high up in his heavenly throne. The name Amun-Hotep honors Amun, meaning Saturn. When Amenhotep IV fully realized that his name honored the Dark Lord instead of the Lord of the Light, he changed his name to Akhenaten, as he indeed had become a servant of Aten. That was in 1346 BCE, when his age was 33 years old. 3 years later, when Nefertiti gave him a son, in 1343 BCE, they named him Tutankhaten, as mentioned earlier. After Akhenaten's murder, this 9-year-old child king was renamed Tutankhamun, meaning living image of Saturn. By honoring Aten as the son of God, Akhenaten had become a huge threat for the Saturnian priesthood. That was because Akhenaten had introduced monotheism to ancient Kemet, in which only the Lord of the Light represented the glory of God. Next, Akhenaten ended all the privileges of the priesthood had since Kenjer became the first Semitic king in ancient Kemet, 1764 BCE. Exactly 430 years after 7640 BCE, Akhenaten's murder was commissioned by the Saturnian priesthood as stated before. In total, the Saturnian priesthood had lost their power for 7 years. Akhenaten got enlightened around the middle of 1346 BCE, while he was murdered around the middle of 1334 BCE. Saturnian priesthood were so traumatized by these 7 powerless years that later on they put this number 7 in their scriptures in many different ways. Also, the proclaimed exile lasted allegedly 430 years, which is a numerological also a 7. The name Ra-Horakhti refers to the trinity of Ra, Horus, and Aten. Literally, this name means who rejoices in the horizon in God's name as the light which is in the sun disk. Clearly, the one true God is meant here, and most certainly not Yahweh. Due to the introduction of monotheism by Akhenaten in 1346 BCE, the social status of the priest dropped from the second highest level to the bottom level. In those days, the power base of the Saturnian priesthood was in Thebes, nowadays known as Karnak. There was a temple of Amun, honoring the Dark Lord. That is why Akhenaten built a new capital right in the middle between Thebes and the Gizeh pyramids. He named that new capital Akhetaten, which means city of Aten. At this location, we find nowadays the city of Amarna. The city map of Akhetaten is available on the internet. Akhenaten served the lords of the light, or the powers that want to be served the Dark Lord. Aten means Helios, the son of God. Amun means Saturn, the dark lord of the rings. Akhenaten manifested Christ consciousness. The story of Mithras, nearly 1,000 years later, was based on Akhenaten. And that story eventually became the story of Jesus. It is the timeless story of good versus evil, of the devil-serving man versus the God-serving man. Horemheb, who was of so-called common birth, was the commander-in-chief of the army under the reigns of Tutankhamun and I. During the reign of Horemheb, which started around 1319 BCE, all changes made by Akhenaten were undone. Horemheb made it clear that Kemet was completely back under the control of the Saturnian priesthood. That is why a personified Amun is standing next to his own statue. Horemheb also demolished monuments of Akhenaten, reusing their remains in his own building projects. And he usurped monuments of Tutankhamun and I. Horemheb presumably remained childless since he appointed his vizier Paramessi as his successor, who would assume the throne as Ramesses I, the founding king of ancient Kemet's 19th dynasty. So, what about the book of Exodus? Is this a genuine historical account? Well, first of all, there is no evidence at all that the so-called Temple of Solomon ever existed. To me, it is absolutely clear that it is in reality a metaphysical temple, as described by the Kabbalah. My conclusion is that this history of the so-called Israelites is in reality describing the hidden agenda of the Saturnian priesthood. There is overwhelming historical and archaeological evidence that none of all their stories ever really happened. The Canaan described in the book of Joshua is a fantasy land that never really existed. However, due to their hidden agenda, the Saturnian priesthood was able to seize control over most of the part of this region more than 3,000 years later. Their ultimate goal is to create Great Israel, named Zion, which includes both the Nile area and the Mesopotamia. Have you ever wondered about the name of the Israelites, or should I say Israelites? They claim to be the chosen people. Well, to the Lord of the Light, all men are equal. Only the worshippers of the Dark Lord believe in division for conquest. The fictitious character named Jacob in the book of Genesis, the grandson of the fictitious character named Abraham, changed his name into Israel, because his name means El rules, or Saturn rules. That is why these Saturn worshippers honor their god on Saturn Day, which they have named Sabbath. In fact, Yahweh, El, Anu, and Ilu all refer to at least one evil extraterrestrial intruder coming from Saturn's moon Titan. This satanic dark lord is wrathful, vengeful, jealous, and angry, as it is well documented in ancient scriptures. The ones who serve this dark lord as their god are named the El-Eid, the El-Ohim, the Anunnaki, or the Illuminati. However, do not throw away the baby with the bathwater. Ancient scriptures like the books of Genesis and Exodus also contain deep spiritual insights. We only need to distinguish between what is baby and what is bathwater, or between what is wheat and what is chaff. In reality, the name Moses originated from Tutmosis, meaning born of Tut, as stated before. Tut represents the mental state of complete understanding. I think that the fictitious character of Moses actually was based on Akhenaten, who completely understood the essence of God and God's creation, just as I do nowadays. Furthermore, the Ten Commandments, together with the first chapter of Genesis, are the most important parts of these ancient texts regarding the real essence of the one true God. During the remaining Comitian dynasties, the Saturnian priesthood made sure that not another enlightened king like Akhenaten would again upset them. This lasted about 1,000 years until Alexander the Great conquered Kemet in 332 BCE and renamed it Aegyptos. On behalf of the Macedonian Empire, Ptolemy I became the first pharaoh of the 32nd dynasty in 305 BCE. The last pharaoh of this Ptolemaic dynasty was the well-known Cleopatra. In the Istanbul Archaeological Museum, we find a statue of this great Alexander III of Macedon. He was 24 years young when he conquered Kemet. He died at the age of 34 years. Is it me, or is there a clear resemblance between Cleopatra VII, Cleopatra, and the woman depicted in the Statue of Liberty? Was this Cleopatra VII perhaps a full-blood descendant of the prime evil mother that was raped by the sons of the Elohim? During the reign of this last Egyptian pharaoh, she bonded with Julius Caesar, the ruler of the Roman Empire. After Cleopatra's suicide, Egypt became a province of the Roman Empire. That was the start of the 33rd dynasty of Egypt, in which Rome became the new capital. Therefore, also the power base of the Saturnian priesthood went to Rome. When this transmigration was completed, our current era commenced. This birth of our current year 1 was therefore in Rome, most certainly not in Bethlehem, which did not exist in those days. Officially, this Roman Empire fell apart in 641 CE. In reality, the Saturnian priesthood remained in control behind the scenes. They have always been the hidden puppet masters controlling the official rulers. That is why we nowadays count the years since their current power base was established in Rome. Did you know that the original name of the city of Rome was Saturnia, meaning city of Saturn? In the year 740 of our current era, the Khazarian king Hulan converted all Khazars to the so-called religion of Abraham. Thus the Khazars became the alleged 13th tribe of Israel, which named themselves the Ashkenazi Jews, allegedly the descendants of Ashkenaz, who was the first son of Gomer, who was the first son of Japhet, who was the second son of Noah. Please note that the name Jew originated from Jehudi, the name of the fourth fictitious son of the fictitious character named Jacob, later known as Israel. Most people know that the Yiddish language is completely different than Hebrew. Yiddish is a Khazarian language. Hebrew is an ancient Semitic language. In the year 969, the Khazars were defeated by the Russian army of Sviatoslav. Next, the Ashkenazi Jews fled to Europe. There, Ashkenazi Jews founded the four fellow soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon, commonly known as the Knights Templar, or the Order of the Temple, or simply Templars. It was in the year 1111 that 9 founding Templars first band together. In 1129, the Council of Troyes, this order was officially endorsed by the Vatican. The Templars created the first banking institution. Their ultimate goal was the conquest of the city of Jerusalem. In a period of nearly 200 years, the Templars organized 4 crusades. What was so important about Jerusalem? History tells us that in 1200 BCE, Jerusalem was conquered by the Jebusites. According to the book of Genesis, the Jebusites were descendants from Noah's son Ham through his son Canaan. They were therefore also known as the Canaanites. They were known for their abominable practices, including child sacrifice. Were the Jebusites the same as the Saturnian priesthood that left Kemet during the monotheistic reign of Akhenaten? Was that the real story of the Exodus? Anyway, the Templars did not succeed in conquering Jerusalem. On May 18, 1291, the Templars were defeated in the siege of Acre by the Mamluks led by the Sultan of Egypt in Al-Ashraf Khalid. The city of Acre is located at the coast of the Mediterranean Sea, halfway between present-day Beirut and Jerusalem. 2 years later, on December 14, 1293, his Mamluk Sultan was assassinated, most likely commissioned by the Templars. This was most certainly not the last murder that was commissioned by the Saturnian priesthood. In case you might think that I cannot prove that the Saturnian priesthood was behind the Knights Templar, simply pay attention to the goddess and the god of the Templars. To me, it is clear that Baphomet represents the Dark Lord, meaning Saturn, while to the Templars, Isis represented the moon Luna, as she also does to the Saturnian priesthood. As the ancient Comitian hieroglyphs only depicted consonants, the name Isis can also be written as SS, just like the Nazis in the Second World War did. The number that corresponds to Isis are therefore both 11 and 1111. That is why the Templars were officially founded in 1111. However, the First Crusade started about 15 years earlier, commissioned by Pope Urban II as the public leader of the Saturnian priesthood in those days. So what is the story behind the Templars flag? Imagine a decapitated pyramid that is hollow and has no base. Next, crush this hollow cardboard pyramid straight to the floor. This results in the symbol of the Templars flag. The meaning of the symbol is that the control group at the top of the pyramid of power wants to crush all full-blood humans. But directly after the Templars were defeated, and they therefore failed to found the state of Israel around Jerusalem, just 2.5 months later, they founded the state of Switzerland instead. The French name Suisse is a contraction of Suis, meaning following Isis. Ever since, Switzerland always remained neutral in any war. Hopefully you now know why. In order to fully make sure that the Templars, meaning the Saturnian priesthood, became above the law, they founded also 3 city-states. This empire of the 3 cities consists next to the Vatican City of Washington in the District of Columbia and the City of London. Have you ever wondered why there is an obelisk in each of these 3 Saturnian city-states? In the 20th century, the Saturnian priesthood organized again crusades. This time, they did not do it as directly as in the medieval past. After the First World War, Palestine was brought under British mandate. After the Second World War, the unlawful state of Israel was founded. Currently, the Saturnian priesthood is organizing the Third World War, which ultimate goal is the founding of Great Israel, also known as Zion, including both the Nile region and the Mesopotamia region, stated before. World War III is also needed to fully conquer Jerusalem. Only then the Saturnian crusades will be completed. That is why all so-called leaders are puppets who are controlled by the Hasidic rabbis, as this Saturnian priesthood is known nowadays. For over 5,000 years, the offsprings of the sons of the Elohim are terrorizing life on this planet. Their belief in their Dark Lord tells them to do so. They will not stop unless we make them. We do that by exposing them, as I have done in this broadcast. I therefore ask you to share this with as many people as you can. I thank you in advance for that. This broadcast will also become available in Spanish, French, German, Italian, and Dutch. For more information on that, go to the website of pateo.nl. Thank you very much for watching this special episode of Pateo TV. Namaste.
Yeah, this was the main broadcast, so to say. I will now come back to the quest that I put on the internet, the Truth and Dare quest. Therefore, I will share my screen again, but now with the other presentation. Let me see how I do that. I think it's this one. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this show about the true human history. Sorry for the beginning. I was a little bit nervous, so didn't went too well, but I hope you got it. In case you missed my name is Johan Oldenkamp, and yeah, my presentation was about the truth about of our own history, human history. And before this show, before this broadcast, I put on the internet a video, and that is the video called the Truth Challenge. Maybe you've seen it, maybe you didn't. And in that video, I asked 4 questions because I've been working for quite some time now to make to reveal the truth, so to say. But there are always people who come to me after a lecture or whatever, and they say to me, "Yeah, you've not told me anything new," which is completely impossible because I did many years of research to find all that. So, and I don't think it was known before that. So to make sure that no one can say that after this broadcast, or probably some will still do, I asked these 4 questions, and nobody, I repeat, nobody was able to answer these 4 questions correctly. Not even so-called ascended masters or people from the Galactic Federation of Light or whatever you want to believe in. None of those were able to answer these questions correctly. So that's also a kind of statement. Many people, though, had the first question correct. A couple had the first one correct, because the correct answer of the year that Atlantis perished was 9600 BCE. And some were actually quite good in that. There's also some who had someone who had the answer for the second question correct, but it turned out that he also had read my book, so my biggest ebook, and so he was not able to participate in this contest, this Truth and Dare contest or game. But the correct answer was, of course, 3114 BCE, and most important proof for this date is, of course, the Mayan calendar, because that starts to count. And why does it start to count the years? Well, I've explained that. That was because of the arrival of Luna. And then the year that Abram left the city of Haran. The correct answer is 1787, as I explained in this presentation. And most people are way too far in the future, so to say. They give much more recent dates, but I think this is the correct one. And then the last one, yeah, most people claim it's Ramesses the second or any other name, but no one has mentioned Akhenaten, and I think that's the most strange, because this was the most important king of ancient Kemet ever, and the fact that most people think that he was doing something wrong is the very opposite of the truth. He was doing something very, very right. But of course, that was not in the interest of the people who want to control this world. So that's why he was given a very bad name on the internet. If the presentation went a little bit too fast for you, which I can imagine, because I was reading it and maybe not everything was really clear, then you can buy this book. It's a book of 93 pages. The price is €5. It's an ebook, it's a PDF book. And if you send me the money through PayPal or bank transfer, then you immediately receive it. And all the PowerPoint slides I just presented here are in that book as well. And of course, the words that I read, with some extra words as well. So I think it's a very comprehensive book in order to fully understand the Tiamat theory, as I've presented today in this broadcast. So I want to point some very important dates which are mentioned in the presentation. And the first one is 1948 BCE, before our current era. And that was the year where the so-called character of Abraham was born. I don't think we should take this literally. This is just a reference to when they got full power, perhaps. And yeah, it's very remarkable that the year 1, I'll come back to that, is right in the middle between the year that the unlawful state of Israel was founded, which is the same number, also 1948, but then in our common era. So this is the first date I want to point out, 1948 BCE and 1948 CE. I think it's too coincidental to be coincidence. And what about the second one? Yeah, because the migration started, the migration of power from the Mesopotamian area to the Nile area started in the year 1776 BCE. And everyone who has seen my presentation about covert symbolism knows exactly what I'm going to now, because we saw the same number on the one USA dollar bill, but then, of course, in our current era. So maybe this number is very important. And we also see the number 76. 17 is very important to me, but 76, when we add up the 7 and the 6, we get 13. And there we get another reference to the 13th tribe of Israel. So it's very meaningful, these numbers. And when was the start of the Hebrew or the Judaic calendar? That's in the year 3761 BCE. And again, we find the 7-6 now right in the middle. And to me, that's very meaningful. This gives a 13, and the 1 and the 3 also gives a 13. Yeah, maybe you think I'm looking too deep in this, but to me, it's very meaningful. And yeah, to go even further, let us look at the orbital time of Saturn, because it's all about Saturn. Javer, El, Ilu, Anu, they all refer to Saturn. So what is so important about Saturn? Well, the orbital time of Saturn is 10,760 days. So again, we find 7-6 right in the middle. So to me, this 7-6, which adds up to 13, is a clear reference to the group that wants to control. And even when we add up 19 and 48, we get the reverse of 76, which is 67. And that's the same group. And also this adds up, of course, to 13. So to me, this is all way too coincidental to be coincidence. And then we go to the obelisk, the famous obelisk that is now on the St. Peter's Square. But that obelisk was in the middle of the circus of Nero, and before him, Caligula. And yeah, they did all kinds of things to entertain the people here. And this land was known as the Vaticum. It was the Etruscan town of Vaticum, or the Ager Vaticanus in Latin, the land of Vatican. And there, much later, of course, the Vatican City was built on that very same spot. So what was so important about this obelisk here? Maybe you've seen this movie, Ben-Hur. It came out in 1959. Very much adventure, so to say. It's very much action, and they keep on running around this middle of this circus. And of course, they were fighting, and they're doing mean things. Maybe you've seen the film. Very exciting. But ever since, what we see in our culture is what is called in Latin panem et circenses, meaning bread and circuses, or meaning bread and play. Just give the people bread and play so they will not revolt. And that is going on for about 2,000 years now. Yeah, we now have television, and when we switch that thing on, yeah, we get the circus and all kinds of varieties. So that is our reality now. Everybody has to eat. Most of us have something to eat, and we are continuously being played, so to say. So our attention is pulled to something that is not as important as what is really important, which is the meaning of our life, of course. So this is going on ever since, and the obelisk right in the middle plays a very important role in that control by bread and circuses. by dividing attention or distracting attention and giving people what they think they want, but they not really want that. I can assure you that. Yeah, and now it becomes even more trickier because what is the true story about Christianity? I explained in the first series of Pateo TV that the whole character of Jesus is not historic. It's a spiritual story, so we should not take this literal. But we know from history that many people were sacrificed. They were fed to the lions, so to say. You see here a depiction of that. And that happened when Nero was the emperor, and also before him when Caligula was the emperor. They started to torture and to persecute the so-called Christians. But the whole story of Christ was not written then yet. I think that was about the year 300 or something. Then the first books appeared, or maybe 100, but most certainly not in this day and age. Yeah, the whole idea of Christ was not invented then. But we learn from history that so-called Christians were fed to the lions. Who were then those people who were fed and who were murdered, who were tortured? What was their belief system? According to my research, their belief system had everything to do with Mitra. And Mitra is spelled differently. This is the Greek way, and this is more from Persia. And this story is at least 1200 BCE when it started. So for more than 3,000 years, we have this story of Mithras. And as I've explained in the episode of on astrotheology, Mithras is, of course, representing a personification of the sun. The sun I refer to as Helios. You can also call him Ra or whatever. Or Aten, also very correct. And we learn from that mythology from ancient Persia that this personification of Mitra was born on December 25th. And that he was born of a virgin. And he also had 12 disciples. And he performed miracles. And it goes even further because after being dead for 3 days, he became resurrected. And he was worshipped on the sun day, this sun god. It was his day, the day of the sun. The sun named Mithras or Helios or Aten. So isn't that remarkable? So the people who were butchered, so to say, who were sacrificed to the lions and who were murdered in plain sight to entertain the others, those people believed in Mithras, not literally. They believed in the true power of Aten, just like Akhenaten did. That is the whole story. And then later that story was written down, and the character of Mitra became Jesus. That's the whole idea. So this guy Mitra didn't live about 1200 BCE, and the guy Jesus didn't live around the beginning of our common era. That's all a myth. That's not true. It's about believing in the power of light, in light consciousness, or Christ consciousness, as we call it now. And the people around the beginning of our era, around the year 1 and later on, who believed in that power of light, who actually understood it, who knew the power of light, they were persecuted because they were a threat to the Saturnian priesthood that went from Thebes to Rome. That is the true story here. It were not Christians, because there were no Christians then. It were, people who believed in Mitra, so to say. So they were Mitraist or something. I'm not sure how to pronounce that word. But they were not believing in Christ because the idea of Christ came later. Yeah, at least 100 CE or maybe even later than 100 CE. But as early as, not earlier than 100 CE, the whole idea of Mithras. So anyone who still thinks that is a historical story of Jesus, just study the work on Mitra or Mithras, and then you will see that the whole idea of Jesus is just put on the idea of Mithras. Nothing new under the sun, so to say. And it's all about the sun, the consciousness of sun, Son of God. We can become as enlightened as the sun, as pure and as giving and as full of love, unconditional love as the sun. That is what we can achieve here. our consciousness can ascend to that highest level. And because these people knew that, they became a threat, and that's why they were fed to the lions. That is the true story here. And much later, on that same spot, the current there was a basilica built, the old Saint Peter's Basilica, or Basilica Sancti Petri in Latin. And that construction started in the year 322 CE. And to me, it's very remarkable because this number we also find on the logo of Skull and Bones. So maybe it's a reference to the control group who built a kind of cathedral, a basilica near the right behind the obelisk. And it was a huge building because it took 30 years to complete. And it was all done under the rule of Constantine I. He also named himself Constantine the Great, and he even became a saint. Isn't that remarkable? So a Roman emperor became a saint according to the power control group in the Vatican. And what did he do? He decreed tolerance for the Christianities, for people who believed in Christianity. So from that moment on, the Christians were somehow tolerated, or they were no longer persecuted. But are these the true Christians? No, these were not the true Christians. They believed in the interpretation by the Vatican, by the power group. They changed the stories on very essential points. So they believed in a literal story, not in the metaphysical light story that the Mitra believers believed in, so to say, or Akhenaten or anyone else, anyone who really understood the Christ consciousness or the consciousness of light. So ever since the people in this building, in the St. Peter's Basilica, were controlling what is called Christianity, but it was not the original belief system, so to say, the original insights from Akhenaten and all what came later, because the story of Mithras was directly after Akhenaten. Akhenaten died or was murdered, as I explained, in 1334 BCE. So yeah, about a little bit more than 100 years later, this whole story of Mithra started in Persia. So it's clearly connected, I think. Yeah, and he also called this Constantine I also called the first council of Nicaea in 325. And this was not even finished then. So here we see how the power control group was able to change that religion, or actually create a new religion next to Judaism. Divide and conquer, that was their strategy. And then around 1450, it was built next to it. Sorry, no, it was. I said next. No, it was built here. This is the Basilicum, and this is the old one. Here you see it, and here you see the date, 1415. So it looks a bit like this. Very impressive, huge building next to the obelisk. And this is how it looks nowadays, because in the 17th century, this building was built. It was created. The old one was here, and the new one is now behind it. So this is the new Basilica of Saint Peter. And ever since, the control group, the powers that want to be, they have their main seat in this building. And the ignorant people here in front have no clue what is going on. They are fully baffled by their stories. And very predominantly here is the Great Sphinx. They put a cross on top, but don't let yourself be fooled by that. This is showing that the power base is fully operational here. If this whole explanation was too fast for you and you want to learn more, if it was too fast, then buy the short book. But if you want to learn more, then buy this bigger book. It has over 500 pages. And you can start by buying just the first 2 chapters for only €5 or $6.83. And if you like it, then you can continue reading. If you buy all of them, all chapters, it's $41 or 30 euros. And it constitutes of 10 books, 10 ebooks. Yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this episode, this broadcast. I will do it next week in Dutch. I'll be less nervous then. On April 30, together with Monica, I will do it in Spanish. Actually, Monica will do most of the talking, but because my Spanish is not good at all. Then on May 7, it will be in French, together with Alban. On May 14, I'm not available, so then we do a repeat or rerun of the broadcast of today, in English, of course. And then on May 21, we'll do the broadcast in German, together with Josephine. And then finally, on May 28, we have the broadcast in Italian, together with Rafa. Maybe more languages will follow. That's not clear now, but if you think this should be done in more languages as well, then please contact me, and maybe we can make that possible. So again, for the second time, I thank you very much for watching this episode of Pateo TV. If you've liked it, if you have enjoyed it, then please share it. Either share the website of CCN, ConsciousConsumerNetwork.tv, or share my website, pateo.nl, or share the video. If you watch it on YouTube, share the URL, the link to the YouTube video, because the more people know about this, the better it is. Because I truly know that for more than 5,000 years, this game is going on, the game of deception, and most people who are believing in Jesus, so to say, or they are true Jewish believers, genuine believers, they are fooled. They are fooled big time by their religious system. And it's time to wake up, because then they can truly understand what is the consciousness of God, the highest level of understanding. That is what it's all about. And as long as you think that Christianity or Judaism or Islam or any other religion, Hinduism, Buddhism, is bringing you to that level of understanding, yeah, then you are fools. You're actually fools. So it's time to wake up from that dream, from that bad dream, and start to study, start to learn. As I said before, stop believing and start knowing. Only then you can build a house on rock. Otherwise, you have built a house on sand, which is not something a smart man, a wise man will do. I'm a little bit ahead of time. I hope that's okay. Maybe CCN can put a small video in between. Because for now, I'll stop this broadcast. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you tune in another time in Dutch next week, perhaps, or another language in one of the other weeks. Thank you very much, and namaste.